The rain drummed against the wooden roof of our small cottage, like angry fingers demanding to be let in. I sat on my thin mattress, hugging my knees to my chest, watching my father count silver coins at the kitchen table for the third time that night. His hands shook, and not from the cold. Kai, my younger brother, slept peacefully beside me, his small chest rising and falling with each breath. He didn't know. He didn't understand that tomorrow, everything would change forever. My name is Ren, and I'm 17 years old. In our kingdom of Valoria, that's old enough to be considered an adult, old enough to make your own choices. But tonight, I had no choice at all. My father had made a deal, and I was the payment. 3 months ago, my mother got very sick. The medicine she needed cost more money than our family could ever hope to earn in 5 years. My father worked at the docks, loading and unloading ships from dawn until dusk. I helped him whenever I could, but it wasn't enough. Nothing was ever enough. When the doctors said my mother only had weeks left without treatment, my father became desperate. Desperate people do terrible things, things they never imagined they could do. That's when the messenger came. He wore clothes made of fabric so fine it seemed to glow in the dim light of our cottage. His shoes had no mud on them, even though it had been raining for days. He looked at our home like it was something dirty, something beneath him. But he had a message from the palace, from King Darius himself. King Darius ruled the northern territories, a land of ice and mountains, where wolves howled at night and the winter never truly ended. People called him the Omega King, though nobody really understood what that meant. Some said he had special powers, abilities that made him different from normal people. Others whispered that he was cursed, that anyone who got too close to him would suffer. The only thing everyone agreed on was that he was ruthless, cold as the snow that covered his kingdom, and he always got what he wanted. The messenger's offer was simple and horrible. King Darius needed someone for his household, someone young and strong. In exchange, he would pay enough money to cover my mother's treatment and leave plenty for my family to live comfortably for years. My father didn't ask what needed someone meant. He didn't ask if I would be safe, if I would be treated well, or if I would ever come home again. He just looked at my mother's pale face and said, yes. I found out 2 days later when I overheard him talking to my uncle in hushed voices outside our cottage. I felt like the ground had disappeared beneath my feet. My own father, the man who taught me to fish and told me stories about brave heroes, had sold me like I was a piece of furniture. When I confronted him, he couldn't look me in the eyes. He just kept saying I had no choice over and over again, like those words could somehow make everything okay. The next morning, the royal carriage arrived. It was black as midnight, pulled by 4 horses that were bigger than any I'd ever seen. Guards in silver armor stood on either side, their faces hidden behind helmets. One of them opened the carriage door and gestured for me to get inside. My mother cried, holding onto my hands so tightly I thought she might never let go. But she did. She had to. My father stood in the doorway, his face turned away. Kai ran after the carriage, calling my name until his voice faded into the distance. The journey to the Northern Kingdom took 7 days. I sat alone in that carriage, wrapped in a thick blanket they'd given me, watching the landscape change from green fields to rocky hills to endless snow. The guards never spoke to me. At night, we stopped at inns, and they would lock me in a room. Not because I was a prisoner, they said, but for my protection. I didn't feel protected. I felt abandoned. On the 7th day, I saw the palace for the first time. It rose from the mountainside like it had grown there naturally, all white stone and tall towers that pierced the grey sky. Ice crystals hung from every surface, making the whole building sparkle even in the weak winter sunlight. It was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen, and the most terrifying. The carriage stopped in a courtyard filled with servants rushing back and forth. A tall woman with silver hair and sharp eyes approached. She introduced herself as Lady Helena, the head of the royal household. Her voice was stern but not unkind as she explained the rules. I would serve in the palace, doing whatever tasks were assigned to me. I would live in the servants' quarters. I would never speak to the king unless he spoke to me first. I would never enter certain parts of the palace without permission. Most importantly, I would never, ever try to leave. That first night, lying in a narrow bed in a room I shared with 3 other servants, I cried silently into my pillow. I thought about running away, but where would I go? Mountains and snow surrounded the palace. Even if I could escape, my mother would die without the medicine my father's blood money had bought. I was trapped, and everyone responsible for trapping me was far away, probably sleeping peacefully. I didn't see King Darius for 2 whole weeks. I worked in the kitchens, peeling vegetables and washing dishes until my hands were raw. The other servants whispered about him, sharing stories that seemed too wild to be true. They said he never smiled, that his eyes could freeze you in place with just a look, that he'd once destroyed an entire army by himself using powers nobody understood. They said he was looking for something, someone specific, but nobody knew what or who. Then one morning, Lady Helena came to the kitchens and pointed directly at me. "You," she said. "The king wants to see you. Now." My heart felt like it might burst from my chest as I followed her through corridors lined with paintings and tapestries. We climbed stairs that seemed to go on forever, passing guards who stood like statues. Finally, we stopped in front of 2 massive wooden doors carved with images of wolves and stars. Lady Helena knocked 3 times, and a deep voice from inside said, "Enter." The throne room was enormous, with windows that reached from floor to ceiling, showing nothing but white snow and grey sky. And there, sitting on a throne made of dark wood and white fur, was King Darius. He was younger than I expected, maybe 25, with black hair that fell past his shoulders and eyes so blue they looked almost purple in certain lights. He wore simple clothes, not the fancy robes I thought a king would wear. But there was something about him, something in the way he held himself, that made it impossible to think of him as anything but powerful. When his eyes met mine, I felt a shock run through my entire body, as lightning had struck me. He studied me for a long moment, his expression impossible to read. Then he stood and walked down the steps from his throne, moving like a wolf stalking prey. He circled me slowly, and I kept my eyes on the floor like Lady Helena had taught me. My hands trembled, and I hoped he didn't notice. "Look at me," he commanded, his voice quiet but leaving no room for argument. I raised my eyes to meet his, and something strange happened. His cold expression cracked, just for a second, and I saw surprise flash across his face. "What's your name?" he asked. "Ren, Your Majesty," I managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. He reached out and touched my chin, tilting my head slightly to one side, then the other, studying my face like I was a puzzle he was trying to solve. His fingers were cold, but his touch was surprisingly gentle. "Do you know why you're here, Ren?" "My father made a deal with you, Your Majesty, for my mother's medicine." Something dark crossed his face. "Your father sold you to me for money. Say it properly." The words hurt coming out. "My father sold me to you for money, Your Majesty." He nodded, dropping his hand. "At least you understand the truth. Most people prefer comfortable lies." He turned and walked back to his throne, gesturing for Lady Helena to leave. She bowed and left quickly, and suddenly I was alone with the Omega King. "I'm going to be honest with you, Ren, because I think you deserve that much. You're not here to work in my kitchens or clean my palace. You're here because I've been searching for someone like you for a very long time. Someone with your specific qualities." "I don't understand, Your Majesty." "What qualities?" He smiled, but it wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who'd finally found something they'd lost. "You will. In time, you'll understand everything. For now, just know this. You belong to me now, not as a slave, but as something far more important. And I promise you, Ren, I will never let you go." The days that followed were strange and confusing. I was moved from the servants' quarters to a room in the east wing of the palace, a room with a real bed, soft blankets, and a window that looked out over the snowy mountains. Lady Helena brought me new clothes, not servants' clothes, but fine tunics and warm cloaks. The other servants started treating me differently, with a mixture of curiosity and fear. They would stop talking when I entered a room, and I often caught them staring at me when they thought I wasn't looking. King Darius summoned me every evening after dinner. We would sit in his private study, a room filled with books and maps and strange objects I didn't have names for. At first, he just asked me questions about my life, my family, what I liked and didn't like. I answered carefully, always aware that he was a king and I was nobody, That one wrong word could change everything. But as the days passed, I started to notice things about him that didn't match the stories. He wasn't cold, not really. He was guarded. Like someone who'd been hurt so many times, he'd built walls around himself. Sometimes, when he thought I wasn't paying attention, I'd catch him watching me with an expression that was almost sad. He never raised his voice, never threatened me, never did any of the terrible things the servants' stories suggested he might do. Instead, he was patient, even kind in his own strange way. 3 weeks after I arrived, he finally explained why I was there. We were sitting by the fireplace in his study, and snow was falling heavily outside the window. He poured 2 cups of hot tea and handed one to me, which surprised me because kings don't usually serve other people. "Have you ever heard of soul bonds, Ren?" he asked, settling into his chair across from me. I shook my head. "No, Your Majesty. Most people haven't. It's something that was common hundreds of years ago, but became rare over time. A soul bond is a connection between 2 people, something deeper than friendship or even family. When 2 souls are bonded, they're meant to be together. They understand each other without words, they feel each other's emotions, they make each other stronger." He paused, staring into his tea like it held answers. "When I was 15, I met someone who I thought was my soul bond. His name was Marcus." The way he said that name made my chest hurt, even though I didn't know why. There was so much pain packed into those 2 syllables. Marcus was a nobleman's son, clever and brave and beautiful. We grew up together, trained together, and became best friends. When I realized what he meant to me, I thought I was the luckiest person in the world. I trusted him completely. I shared everything with him, all my secrets, all my fears, all my dreams. I was going to make him my partner, my equal. I was going to give him half my kingdom. King Darius set his cup down, his hands clenching into fists. But Marcus didn't want half the kingdom. He wanted all of it. He was working with my uncle, plotting to overthrow me and take the throne. They were going to kill me during the winter festival, make it look like an accident. I only found out because one of Marcus's fellow conspirators got drunk and talked too much in a tavern. I couldn't help myself. "What did you do?" I confronted him. I gave him a chance to explain, to apologize, to show even the smallest bit of regret. Do you know what he did instead? He laughed. He told me I was a fool for trusting him, that I was weak, that I didn't deserve to be king. He said pretending to care about me was the hardest thing he'd ever had to do. The king's voice was flat now, emotionless, which somehow made it worse. I had him arrested along with all the conspirators. My uncle was executed. Marcus was banished to the southern deserts, sent away with nothing but the clothes on his back. "I'm sorry that happened to you, Your Majesty," I said quietly, and I meant it. Nobody deserved that kind of betrayal, especially not from someone they loved. He looked at me then, really looked at me, and I saw something vulnerable in his eyes. After Marcus, I built walls around myself. I became the cold, ruthless king everyone fears. I told myself I would never trust anyone again, never let anyone close enough to hurt me. But the problem with soul bonds is that you can't just turn them off. Even after everything Marcus did, part of me still felt connected to him, still ached for what we could have been. It was torture. Then, 6 months ago, I met an old woman who lived in the mountains. She had special abilities, could see things others couldn't. She told me that Marcus was never my true soul bond. She said my real soul bond was out there somewhere, that I would recognize them the moment I saw them, and that finding them would heal the broken parts of me. He leaned forward, his intense gaze locked on mine. "The moment you walked into my throne room, Ren, I knew. You're my soul bond. That's why you're here." I felt like all the air had been sucked out of the room. But I'm nobody, Your Majesty. I'm just a poor boy whose father sold me for medicine money. How could I possibly be your soul bond? Soul bonds have nothing to do with wealth or status or power. They're about something deeper, something that exists before we're born and continues after we die. I know this is overwhelming, and I know you didn't choose this. Neither did I, really. But now that I've found you, now that I know you exist, I can't let you go. Do you understand? I didn't understand, not really, but I nodded anyway because what else could I do? I was trapped in this palace, in this situation, bound by invisible chains made of debt and fate, and things I couldn't control. Over the following weeks, King Darius tried to make me comfortable, tried to show me that being his soul bond didn't have to be terrible. He gave me access to his massive library and seemed genuinely happy when he found me reading. He asked about my interests and arranged for teachers to instruct me in subjects I'd never had the chance to study before. He even sent letters and money to my family, along with updates about my mother's improving health. He was trying so hard to make me care about him, to make me want to stay. And the terrible truth was, it was starting to work. Despite everything, despite knowing I was only here because my father had sold me, I found myself enjoying our evening conversations. King Darius was smart and funny when he let his guard down. He told me stories about his childhood, about the responsibilities and pressures of being king, about his dreams for his kingdom. He listened when I talked, really listened, as my words mattered. Sometimes our hands would brush accidentally, and I'd feel that strange electric sensation again. That connection, he said, was the soul bond. But then everything shattered on a cold morning in my 3rd month at the palace. I was walking through the corridors, heading to the library, when I overheard 2 guards talking. They didn't see me, hidden as I was behind a large pillar. "Did you hear? Lord Marcus has been spotted near the eastern border," one guard said. "After being banished? He must have a death wish," the other replied. "Word is he's planning something. Revenge, maybe. And there's more. Apparently, the king's new favorite, that boy Wren, his father didn't just make a deal for medicine money. He was paid extra to convince the boy to gather information about the king's weaknesses." My blood turned to ice. That couldn't be true. My father wouldn't. But even as I thought it, I remembered his shaking hands counting those coins, the way he couldn't look at me, the guilt written all over his face. He hadn't just sold me. He'd made me an unwilling spy. If you're listening right now, help me prove something wrong. My mother said I wouldn't reach 1,000 subscribers, but stories like this deserve to be heard. Help me show her that these stories matter. I ran. Not away from the palace, because where would I go, but to my room, where I locked the door and tried to breathe through the panic crushing my chest. My father had betrayed me even more completely than I'd imagined. He hadn't just sold me for money. He'd sold me to be a tool against the king, to hurt the one person who'd shown me genuine kindness in this strange new life. I had to tell King Darius. If Marcus was planning something and my father was somehow involved, the king needed to know. But how could I explain without sounding like I was part of the plot? Would he even believe me? Trust was so hard for him after what Marcus had done. Finding out that I, his supposed soul bond, came with treachery attached, might break something in him that could never be fixed. I spent hours pacing my room, trying to figure out what to do. Finally, as evening fell and I knew the king would be expecting me in his study, I made my decision. I would tell him everything, show him the letters my father had sent me, which I'd saved even though they'd felt cold and empty. I would prove that I'd never gathered information, never reported back, never betrayed him, even unknowingly. But when I arrived at the study, King Darius wasn't alone. A man stood near the window, dressed in traveling clothes covered in snow. He turned when I entered, and I saw a face that was handsome but cruel, with cold grey eyes and a mocking smile. This had to be Marcus. "Ah, so this is the new favorite," Marcus said, looking me up and down like I was something he might buy at a market. "How charming. Tell me, Your Majesty, does this one know he's just a replacement? A poor copy of what you really wanted?" King Darius stood from his chair, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. "You were banished, Marcus. Returning means death. I hope whatever you came to say is worth it." "Oh, it is. You see, I've spent the past 2 years in the desert thinking about you, about us, about what went wrong, and I've realized something. I was stupid to try to take your throne through plots and tricks. I should have just taken you instead." Marcus moved closer, and I saw guards shifting in the shadows of the room, hands on their weapons. "We were meant to be together, Darius. This soul bond thing you're so obsessed with, it's real, and it's us, not you and this random peasant boy. You tried to kill me," King Darius said, his voice deadly quiet. "You betrayed everything we had, and you've spent every day since then missing me. Don't lie. I can see it in your eyes even now. You still love me, Darius. You still want me. Send this boy away, and we can start over. I'll be the partner you wanted. I swear it. For a horrible moment, King Darius said nothing. He just looked at Marcus with an expression I couldn't read, and fear seized my heart. What if Marcus was right? What if the king did still love him, still wanted him despite everything? What if I really was just a poor replacement for what he'd lost? Then King Darius laughed, a sound so cold it made Marcus flinch. You think I would take you back? After your betrayal, after your cruelty, you think you can just walk in here and I'll forget everything? You were never my soul bond, Marcus. You were my biggest mistake, and Ren is worth 1,000 of you. Something in Marcus's expression turned ugly. Fine. If I can't have you, nobody will. He moved faster than I thought possible, pulling a knife from his belt and lunging toward King Darius. The guards rushed forward, but they were too far away. Without thinking, I threw myself between them. I felt the knife bite into my shoulder, felt hot pain spread through my body. Then I was falling, and King Darius caught me, his face white with shock. The last thing I saw before darkness took me was Marcus being grabbed by guards, and the king's purple-blue eyes filled with something that looked like terror. I woke up 3 days later, in a bed that smelled like herbs and clean linen. My shoulder was bandaged, and my whole left side ached. King Darius sat in a chair beside the bed, his head in his hands. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. "Your Majesty," I croaked, and his head snapped up. "Ren, thank everything holy, you're awake." He reached for my hand, gripping it tightly. "What you did was incredibly brave and incredibly stupid. You could have died." "So could you," I said. "I couldn't let that happen." "Why? Why would you risk your life for me? You're only here because your father sold you. You didn't choose any of this. You should hate me." I realized then that I needed to tell him everything, needed to be completely honest, even if it meant losing whatever we'd built together. "I need to tell you something." Before Marcus came, I overheard guards talking. They said my father was paid extra to make me spy on you, to find your weaknesses. I swear I didn't know about that part. I never gathered information, never reported anything. You have to believe me. I waited for anger, for accusations, for him to call guards to take me away. Instead, he just squeezed my hand tighter. "I know. When you were unconscious, I had people investigate your father thoroughly. He was approached by people working for Marcus, who offered extra money if he could convince you to spy. But your father refused that part of the deal. He took the medicine money, yes, but he protected you from being used that way. The guards were spreading false rumors planted by Marcus's allies to make me distrust you." Relief flooded through me so powerfully I almost cried. "My father refused. He's not a good man, Ren. He still sold you, still chose your mother over you in a terrible way. But he drew a line at making you a spy. It's not much, but it's something." King Darius moved from the chair to sit carefully on the edge of the bed. "Marcus has been executed for attempting to kill a king. His allies have been arrested. It's over. All of it is finally over. What happens now?" I asked. He looked at me with those incredible eyes, and I saw everything in them, all the pain and hope and fear and longing. "That depends on you. The soul bond is real, Ren. I feel it every moment we're together. This pull toward you that's stronger than anything I've ever experienced. But I won't force you to stay. I won't keep you here if you want to leave. Your mother is healthy now, and your family is financially secure. If you want to go home, I'll arrange it. You'll be free." I thought about my little cottage, about Kai and my mother, and even my father with all his flaws. I thought about going back to my old life, to being poor and ordinary and safe. Then I thought about never seeing King Darius again, never having our evening talks, never feeling that electric connection when we touched. I thought about him sitting alone in this palace, building his walls higher and higher until nobody could reach him anymore. "I don't want to leave," I heard myself say. "I'm angry at my father, angry at the situation, angry that I never had a choice. But staying here, being with you, that's my choice now, and I choose to stay." Something in his face broke open, and for the first time since I'd met him, King Darius smiled, a real smile that made him look younger and happier, and so beautiful it hurt to look at him. "Are you sure? Because once you choose this, once you accept the bond, I meant what I said before. I will never let you go. I'm sure, I said, and I was. But I need you to understand something. I'm not Marcus. I'm not going to betray you, and I'm not going to let you push me away when things get difficult. If we're going to do this, you have to let me in completely. No more walls. He leaned down and pressed his forehead against mine, his cold fingers gentle on my cheek. No more walls, he promised. You saved my life, Ren. Now let me spend the rest of mine making sure you never regret choosing me. Healing took time. My shoulder recovered slowly, leaving a scar that King Darius, who insisted I call him Darius when we were alone, traced with gentle fingers while telling me I was brave. But the emotional healing took longer for both of us. Darius had to learn to trust again, to let me see the vulnerable parts of himself he'd hidden after Marcus's betrayal. I had to work through my anger at my father, my complicated feelings about being sold, and my fear that maybe I wasn't good enough to be a king's soul bond. We helped each other. When Darius had nightmares about Marcus's betrayal, I stayed awake with him, talking until the fear left his eyes. When I missed my family, feeling guilty for being happy in the palace, while they struggled with shame over what my father had done, Darius arranged visits so I could see them and slowly rebuild those broken relationships. Kai especially loved coming to the palace, running through the corridors, and making the serious guards smile despite themselves. My father and I had a long, painful conversation during one of those visits. He cried and apologized and explained that he'd felt trapped, that choosing between his dying wife and his son had nearly destroyed him. I didn't forgive him, not completely, but I started to understand. People make terrible choices when they're desperate. That doesn't make the choices right, but it makes them human. 6 months after the attack, Darius asked me to take a walk with him in the palace gardens. Snow was falling gently, making everything look magical and peaceful. We walked hand in hand, something that would have been unthinkable when I first arrived, but now felt as natural as breathing. I've been thinking about revenge, Darius said suddenly. Not against Marcus, he's gone, but against everyone who hurt me, everyone who made me build those walls and convinced me I had to be cold and ruthless to survive. I wanted to punish them all, to show them they couldn't break me.
Did you?
I asked, curious about where this was going. He stopped walking and turned to face me, snowflakes catching in his dark hair. No, because I realized the best revenge isn't hurting the people who hurt you. The best revenge is healing, becoming happy despite what they did to you, and building something beautiful where they tried to create destruction. Marcus wanted to take everything from me. Instead, his actions led me to you. He failed, and we won. I understood what he meant. My father sold me, but I'd found a place where I belonged, where I was valued and loved. Marcus betrayed Darius, but it opened the path for us to find each other. The people who tried to hurt us had accidentally given us everything we needed. So what happens now? I asked, echoing my question from months ago. Darius pulled a small box from his pocket and opened it to reveal 2 matching rings, made of white gold with blue stones that matched his eyes. In my kingdom, soul bonds are recognized as the highest form of partnership. It's more than marriage, more than any title or position. It means we're equals in everything. That what's mine is yours, and what's yours is mine. I'm asking you, Ren, will you accept this bond officially? Will you stand beside me not as a king's favorite or a companion, but as my true partner? My heart was beating so hard, I thought he must be able to hear it. This was everything I'd never let myself dream of, everything that seemed impossible for a poor boy from a fishing village.
Yes.
1,000 times, yes. He slipped the ring onto my finger, and I did the same for him. Then he kissed me, soft and gentle and full of promise, and I felt the soul bond lock into place like a key turning in a lock. It was like lightning and warmth, and coming home all at once. I understood then what he'd been trying to explain about soul bonds. This wasn't just attraction or affection. This was something ancient and powerful, something that went deeper than anything I could put into words. The official ceremony took place a month later. People came from all over the kingdom to witness the Omega King taking a soul-bonded partner, something that hadn't happened in generations. My family was there too, cleaned up and dressed in fine clothes, looking uncomfortable but proud. My mother cried happy tears, healthy and strong, thanks to the medicine my presence here had brought. Even my father managed to smile, though guilt still shadowed his eyes when he looked at me. Lady Helena, who'd become something like a strict but caring aunt to me, supervised everything to make sure the ceremony was perfect. The other servants, who'd stopped fearing me and started becoming genuine friends, decorated the great hall until it looked like something from a fairy tale. And Darius stood at the center of it all, looking at me like I was the most precious thing in his entire kingdom. After the ceremony, after all the celebrating and dancing and feasting, we stood together on the palace balcony looking out over the snowy mountains. Darius wrapped his arms around me from behind, and I leaned back against his chest, feeling safe and loved and exactly where I belonged. Do you ever wonder what your life would have been like if your father hadn't made that deal? Darius asked quietly. I thought about it honestly. Sometimes. But I think I would have spent my whole life feeling like something was missing, like there was a piece of me somewhere else that I couldn't find. Now I'm whole, so maybe it happened the way it needed to happen, even if the path to get here was painful. I spent 2 years hating Marcus, wanting revenge, imagining all the ways I could hurt him back for what he did to me, Darius said. But standing here with you, I realize I should thank him instead. His betrayal taught me what real loyalty looks like. His lies taught me to recognize truth. His absence made space for you. He tried to destroy me and ended up saving me instead. That was the moment I understood what real revenge looked like. It wasn't violence or punishment or making people suffer. It was healing so completely that the people who hurt you became irrelevant. It was building something so beautiful that their cruelty couldn't touch it. It was being so genuinely happy that their attempts to destroy you turned into the foundation of your greatest joy. Marcus had wanted to take everything from Darius and ended up giving him everything instead. My father had sold me in desperation and accidentally gave me the greatest gift of my life. All the betrayal and pain and fear had transformed into something stronger than any of them could have imagined. I love you, I said, the first time I'd spoken those words out loud. I love you too, Darius replied, holding me tighter, and I meant what I said. I will never let you go. Good, I said, smiling, because I'm not going anywhere. We stood there as snow fell around us and the northern lights began to dance across the sky in ribbons of green and purple. Below us, the palace was warm and bright, full of people celebrating our union. Behind us was all the pain and betrayal and difficult choices that had led us to this moment. Ahead of us was an entire lifetime of possibilities. I was Ren, who had been sold by his father and bought by a king, who had faced betrayal and danger and found love in the most unexpected place. And this was my story, my revenge against everyone who tried to make me small and powerless. I had healed, and I had won, and I was finally, completely, beautifully free. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe and hit that notification bell. Leave a comment telling me what you thought about Ren and Darius's journey, and let me know what kind of story you'd like to hear next. Share this with someone who loves romance and stories about healing and second chances. Remember, every subscription helps me create more content like this. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next story.